I needed to stay somewhat active for my mental health. So even though it was probably 2 months of me being overwhelmed and stressed out, I used working out to help me deal with the stress.
Welcome to Mastery Podcast with Dr. Sass, formerly A True Goddess Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Sass. This is a podcast where we awaken you to express your true essence. My intention is to lead humanity to flourish as true divine beings, living an empowered and abundant life, inspiring each other to expand our authenticity, master our lives, and rise to confidently live our true purpose. On today's episode of Mastery Podcast with Dr. Sass, you will meet Holly Fields. Holly is a certified personal trainer, fitness nutrition specialist, and online health and fitness coach for over 30 years of experience. Holly is currently pursuing her Ph.D. in health education and promotion at Wharton University. She is a women's physique competitor and mom of 4 who started competing in 2000 and has won multiple awards. Today, she shares her story of loss and how she uses her knowledge of bodybuilding to cope with her multiple losses, including her husband's unexpected passing in 2015. Since then, she has rebuilt her life as well as her health. Despite her struggles, Holly pushes through and continue to work on building her physique, qualifying for Masters Nationals in her latest competition. Without further ado, let's meet our special guest, Holly Fields. Welcome to A True Goddess Podcast. Today we have with us Holly Fields. She is here with us today to share her story about grief and loss. A few years ago, Holly lost her husband in was it a heart attack?
We think. Yeah, because he had open heart surgery 4 years before that to repair a valve. And so they didn't do an autopsy, but it was determined that it was heart related.
Okay. So Holly is here with us to share her story and to help anybody out there who's going through grief, to let you know that you're not alone. And there is no right or wrong way to grieve. You have your own process. Also to reach out for help and for advice, and Holly will share her story on that. And welcome, Holly. I thank you so much. Thank you so much for spending your time here with us today on this podcast. And I'm sure our listeners are very grateful for you and for you sharing with us your journey. And thank you so much for being here, Holly.
Thank you for having me.
And Holly, just to have a little bit of background about you, just tell us just a tiny bit of where you're from, where you grew up, what your background is.
So I am from Virginia. I actually live near Roanoke, kind of inside of Roanoke, but I grew up about 30 minutes from here in a little town called Newcastle, which is where my gym is currently at. But basically, you know, what else did you ask me other than where I'm from? That's where I'm from.
Where you grew up, and, you know, just a little bit about you.
So, you know, where I grew up is very country. You can probably tell by my accent. But yeah, there are no stoplights in the entire county. Over 250 square miles of county, no stoplights anywhere. The little town that my gym is in is a population of about 110. So It's a little bitty, but I mean, it was a great place to grow up. My dad's family actually is how we ended up there. I was born in Virginia Beach on the other side of the state, and I'm on the complete west side of the state now. But when my dad's parents both had passed, we ended up moving there. So that's where I grew up. And, I went to Radford University, and that's where I actually started majoring in psychology. But I found a PE major called commercial fitness, which is now exercise science. But my first wellness class that I had to take had all of these components, and one of those was strength training. And so you had to do little sections. And so I fell in love with lifting weights. I changed my major. So I changed my major to physical education with commercial fitness concentration, and kept my minor in psychology. So that's kind of helpful, I guess, with working with clients. But that's kind of how my whole fitness journey started. And so, I have come a really long way in like 3 decades since I graduated from college, and been a competitor in figure and women's physique. So that's just, and I'm a mom of 2 boys. And so that's just a little about me.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing a little bit about you. I'm sure there's much more.
Oh, yeah.
The good, the bad, and all
yes,
the above.
I love it.
Yeah. You and your late husband own businesses together, right? He was like an amazing person who created this like parts.
So he was a machinist back from. That's what he started. He went to his high school actually had like a trade school, and so he went into machining as part of his high school program, and then he started working at a local company here, and that was kind of it. Just took off. They let him have a key. He would go at all hours of the day and night, just playing on the machines, trying to create stuff, which turned into, decades of him becoming like an amazing machinist. And he used to work for a couple of different companies. The one that he started with in high school, mm-hmm. Then he went to work for this other guy, and from there he started his own business. And so he had a machine shop. So I helped him with that a little bit on the side, as well as when I was running my gym. And I was also a teacher. I've been a teacher of all kinds of things. But yeah, that's how he started. And so he became the go-to guy to just look at a part and figure it out and could make it. So he did all kinds of things on, mills and lathes and Swiss turning machines, just all kinds of parts, mostly, like aluminum, all kinds of different parts.
Nice. And at the same time, you also own your own gym while
mm-hmm.
You kind of help him run his business and running your own gym at the same time, right? Yeah.
So I started my first gym in 2000, mm-hmm. but back then, you didn't have key card entry, you didn't have cameras, you had to live there basically to have the gym open. Right. So after we were married and we actually moved back to the house that I grew up in, he bought this house for us. And in 2013, maybe, we started renovating another side of the street to make a second gym for me. And so it opened in 2014. So I've been open almost 9 years now there. But I actually moved my location back to my first gym location, which is crazy, across the street. But yeah, so I was running that gym at the same time as he was running his shop. And I just helped him in the office with like billing and, accounts payable and receivable and all that.
And you guys have children together.
So we had just one together. My youngest son was with him. I had a son from a previous marriage. My oldest is from a previous marriage. And that's actually my future landlord is my ex-husband. And so, but my late husband, my late husband had 2 children from his first marriage. So, we had actually 4 between us, just 1 together. And so our child together, he's now a senior in high school. So he's about ready to graduate this year.
Wow. Exciting time for you.
It is.
Congratulations. And to change the storyline a little bit, I know this is a happy time for you, and I do appreciate you coming on this podcast to share some of the difficult stuff that you have to go through when you were faced with the loss of your husband. And where were you when you found out?
So my 2 sons and I were actually gone to the Outer Banks in North Carolina at the time. And, I had just seen Mike the night before, and he was going to come down. So we saw each other on Friday night. We had like a major intense discussion about, our future together. And because we had been on kind of rocky ground anyway, at the time, it just so many things that we went through. And so we talked Friday night. Saturday morning, I was driving to the beach with my kids. He was driving to a lake to go bass fishing. That was his other best specialty in the world. He could have been a bass pro too. So there's the 2 things that he could do. So he was going fishing. I was going to the beach. We talked like hours while I was driving to the beach and he was driving to the lake. And, so we got like a late check-in, and it was really tiring because I don't know if anybody knows anything about the Outer Banks. When you get to the bridge, if you're stuck on the bridge in traffic, it's going to be hours before you get to where you're going. And so we didn't get checked in till probably 4 or 5 o'clock, and we had left at like 5 in the morning. So it was like 12 hours, and it should only take like 7, maybe. So it was a long drive. Anyway, so I cut my phone off that night and had a whole lot of missed calls the next day. And they were from like the Salem Police Department, and his dad and his brother and his children had actually both gotten in trouble like many times with the law. And so I actually thought the police department, I thought it was about his daughter. Like I thought she had gotten in trouble again. And so then I ended up calling his dad or brother one back, and they told me that they found him like the night before. He was actually on his way back from the lake. We had talked actually when he was on the way back from the lake, and he was telling me how tired he was. And he's like, "Can you believe I'm leaving?" And I'm like, "No," because he would fish until it was too dark to see, or, whatever. And so he was pulling the boat back, and he actually he knew something was happening, I think, because he stopped and put his truck in park. And that's where it ended. And so they had to bust out the windows to get him out because the doors locked automatically. And so then we had to come right back from the beach the next day. And thankfully my oldest son had just gotten his driver's license. And so he pretty much drove, thankfully, the whole way back, which I'm really thankful for that, because right now my youngest is 18 and he still doesn't drive. And I'm I'm really glad that my oldest was driving.
Nice. And how long ago was that?
That was July 25th of 2015.
2015.
So this year will be 8 years.
Wow. And when we spoke, I know you said it was a shock for you, and there are many stages that we all go through, right? When we deal with news like this, and how did you feel in the beginning? I mean, how did you cope with all this this stuff. I mean, you have to run the business, you have young kids to take care of, and now your husband's no longer there, to do the other parts of the family stuff and the business stuff. How did
Yeah, it was, well, I was in shock for months, but he did not have a will, and so that was a whole other just mess. But when it happened, he had probably 4 to 6 guys working for him at the shop. And, most of his parts were production, so they knew kind of what was going on. And so we just had to make a decision really fast, like, what are we going to do? And they knew enough about jobs that were due and things like that, I basically had to step in and just kind of keep doing what I was doing, but also take on the role of everything else to keep things organized. Not necessarily because, I can't program parts and all that, but all of the things that were already programmed and already in production, they agreed, we'll keep it going. We're going to try to keep the shop open. And so it worked for a while until we got outbid on a job, and we ended up having to close in 2017. But again, I would say the first 2 months, easy. I don't know what was going on. I couldn't look back and tell you. I couldn't tell you the conversations that I had. I can't tell you who asked for what, because right then it's like everybody's like, could I have this of his? Could I have this of his? Could I? And I'm like, now is the worst possible time that you could ask me for stuff. I can't make decisions, and I'm having to make all these other decisions related to my business and his business, and what to do about his kids and what to do about my kids. And I was just kind of numb. It was so hard. Like I said, I couldn't tell you what conversations I even had. The whole way back from the beach is still a blur. I don't remember. I remember we stopped to eat on the way back, and that's about all I remember. And it was kind of like, I can't even explain it. It's almost like you're drunk or on drugs or something, and you have no memory, but you don't have anything in your body that's not supposed to be. But it's like your brain is that kind of, it's just mud. Your brain is mud. It's kind of like there's no clear thoughts. There's no clear direction. And that's how I felt for days and days. I mean, having to go to the funeral home and plan things for his funeral. And, thankfully his dad and stepmom were there to help. But again, it was like, they're asking me to make decisions. And it's like, could I just take a time out? I needed a time out for a month and be like, could I come back and do this later? Because I don't know what I'm saying. I can't make a decision. And that's the worst time. It's like, this is why I think it's so important that, you have these conversations with your significant other, and what do you want to happen? If anything happens to you, because we didn't have that talk. He didn't have a will. There was no plan for anything. And so that just makes it so much harder for the other person to handle.
Right. As much as we don't want to talk about it, right? But it's something that when the unforeseen happened, the unfortunate situation happened, it just make it easier for the other person to have plan in advance.
At least to know something, just to know anything of what's the next step. Because if you've not even had a discussion and something happens, it's like you're just, it's like it's hard stuff. It's so hard. And it's hard to make decisions, especially if, and my boyfriend now jokes that like when he's gone, it's not going to worry him, right? Because he's not going to be here. And I'm like, well, I know, but you don't want to make it harder on somebody else that is still here, you know, like the easier you can make that, like any decisions, because like how I felt was, I don't even know how to make a simple decision. Like even driving home, you know, thankfully my oldest son did that because I couldn't have done it. I could not have done it. I probably would have been in a car wreck, or because everything was just a fog. I was not clear on anything. I was so shocked and upset. I couldn't do a simple task, you know? And so that's when you really know who you can depend on too, you know, like to be there to help you. And you really need to take, you know, get all the support that you can. Even when people, you know, people always say, if you need anything, let me know. And you kind of don't want to because you feel like you're imposing, but you really need to because it's so hard to make a simple decision.
Yeah, it's difficult because you going through all this emotion. You're in a state of shock. You depressed, and you know all this stuff. There is let me remind myself here. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, which is Swiss American psychiatrist. She coined these stages many years ago, and apparently we still use it to today. She said we go through like 5 different stages, not necessarily in order. The first one was, and it don't need to be the first one. She said it's shock, which that's the first thing that you experience, right? And anger, bargaining, and then depression. And somewhere after a while, you start accepting. And for me, you know, as I share with you, Holly, I also experienced recent loss. For me, it was like the whole emotion is like up and down. I experienced all 5 in acceptance. My acceptance is totally different. We had that conversation before. It was just like all the different emotions within like minutes. It was like up and down and up and down. And I can imagine the, how you must have felt, you know, on that car ride home. And thank God your son was able to drive. And, and you said, one of the advice that you would give to other people is to have plans, to have talks about this type of stuff. It's not a fun topic, but it makes it easier for the person who is alive.
Right. Well, I mean, you know, especially like, you know, in my current situation, just like if somebody has children with someone else, that is, you know, then you get into, you know, it's like you've got all of these things that are part of this person's estate that passes away, right? And it's things that you don't even think about. They all have to go through this process, right? So it's like, you know, Mike had guns and a boat and a truck and all of the stuff at the shop and all of this stuff he owned, but it's not like been earmarked as, okay, if something happens to me, where does it go? Right? So then everybody's coming at you saying, can I have this? Well, you should give me this. Well, I'm his kid, so I need this. Right? And it's like, oh my gosh, this cannot be just all on me. And it is. It's all on you. Like if you're the surviving spouse and there's nothing that's written out, it's on you. And you have to make every single decision. And you're trying to like live your own life too. So it is so much harder. Like, yes, you should have You need to have these discussions. Put something, I don't even care if you just write it on a piece of paper and it's not notarized. You know, I did this thing online now where you could do like a will and it's supposed to be notarized, and I still haven't done that. But, you know, I did make a start, right? Even if you write something out on paper and sign it, at least you have something for someone to refer to. And you can use that. You know, it doesn't have to be a legal document. Because if somebody passes away, it's kind of like I had an estate attorney, to like help me go through all of this stuff. And of course, nothing was decided ahead of time. Nothing was designated. There was no written anything. And I really feel like she probably would have really appreciated just any kind of something that says, do this with this stuff. Right. You know, I know that I would have appreciated it, but when somebody else is trying to handle it with you and for you, and there's no direction at all, man, and it's so much stress.
Especially when you are trying to deal with all these crazy emotions, right? And you just don't want to think. You don't want to do anything. And you are forced to make decisions, and people were coming after you for answers and stuff. And that's
a lot.
That's a lot to throw at you. How long did it take you? I know it's different for different people, and you pretty much throw yourself back into work, and you kind of dealt with it that way in the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, I would say probably after my 2 weeks of brain fog, you know, I still had my gym. So obviously I had to run my gym and I was running his shop. But, you know, one of the things I think is that I needed to stay somewhat active for my mental health. So even though it was probably 2 months of me being overwhelmed and stressed out, I used working out to help me deal with the stress. Because, you know, it's like I don't know what the word or the, you know, relation is, but it's like, you know, tension builds up and you know, everything gets, when you're stressed and you're upset, it gets like, you know, you get that feeling of you're going to explode. Like, especially when everybody's coming at you and wanting these things and asking for these things. And so I just got, you know, I tried to set up a plan for myself. Okay, here's what I'm going to do to keep myself busy. You know, I'm still training other people. I'm working at the shop, but I'm going to focus on, you know, building a program for me to try to like work out hard, right? So like lifting is stress relieving for me. Like that is I can zone out when I lift weights and I can lift heavy, but it's, you know, you can try to remove you still have all the things going in your head all the time, but you can, for me, I taught myself a way that I could just zone out, you know, put on music, focus on the weights, and try to forget that stress, even if it's just 30 minutes to an hour. And then it's kind of like asking your body to do really hard things makes you feel more like confident and that like you can handle things better. And so it's easier to deal with all of the stress when you've put yourself through like a really hard workout and continuing to do that. You know, it's not just a one-time thing, but like, that's why I wrote a plan for myself. It's like, okay, here's my goals. Like for the next month, I'm going to focus on this, and then I'm going to, you know, reevaluate, and then I'm going to focus on something else. But to keep that focus somewhere, to have an outlet. It's just, I think when you're dealing with grief and loss, and I mean, you know, we can throw in there too that I had lots of loss even before my husband with my dad. Like 4 years before him. And then there were just family member after family member. And even after my husband, there was, 2015, 2016, I lost an uncle. 2017, I lost an uncle. My mom, two of my mom's brothers, back-to-back years, they died. And, just to have an outlet that lets you, some people, it could be like drawing, writing, something creative that can get your mind off of the stress and, the grief. I think creativity is so important because, like, for me, my creativity is bodybuilding, so that was how that's my outlet. I'm not great at drawing. I'm not the best writer. I try to become a better writer. Obviously, if you're writing a dissertation, you have to write. But, one of my favorite things to do that is very meditative and calming to me is like adult coloring books, and I don't do that enough, but I did do that like for years. Just like at the end of the day, I would color like with colored pencils because it was all those little bitty intricate lines and designs and it makes you focus on that. Your mind can't be on 10 million other things when you're trying to fill in these little bitty coloring spaces, So, I just think that's a great thing to kind of have as an outlet.
Great advice there. The drawing part, there are science out there, that prove that it really is, it's like you meditating. It's really calming, beside having to focus on the different colors. And when you kind of like have nothingness in your mind, right? You kind of just like dump all the emotion, all the thoughts, and then you just see rainbows and sunshine, right? Which is nice. And when you exercise, besides the point that you love it got to be something that you love, right? And exercise in itself create this like feel good hormones, right?
Right. You got the endorphins. It's the endorphins that it produces, which make you feel so much better. And that's why, like, a lot of times, even when I don't want to go work out, or, I have clients who are like, I just wasn't feeling it today. And I'm like, look, I get it. I totally have been the same way. I'm like, just do 10 minutes, just go and start. I guarantee you, once you start, you'll probably finish. But even 10, 15 minutes, if you had an hour workout planned, even if you can do 10 or 15, you're going to feel better at the end than if you didn't do anything. Even if you're tired, it actually is going to help you because of those endorphins. And it does, and you're going to feel like you accomplished something. And it doesn't have to always be super intense. It doesn't need to be hours a day, doing anything at all to keep that consistency with your working out is gonna matter. It's the consistency that's the importance, not the how long and how hard. It's what you do day after day after day, even if it has to be dialed back, that's going to give you the most benefit.
Right. Even start with taking a walk.
Right. Just daily activity, daily movement. Get the movement in, you're going to be amazed. And, a lot of people talk themselves out of doing things because they don't think they have the time. But any time matters if you do it regularly. It's what you do regularly that shows up later on, So it doesn't matter if you go do a super hard workout for an hour, and then you do too much and then you're sore, and you do that for 2 weeks and then you decide it's too much and you quit. So what have you done? That whole month you did 2 workouts that hurt you too bad. So you stopped it all together. Whereas if you just did 10 minutes, 5 days a week for those 4 weeks, you're building your consistency, right? So you have to build up your wins, and then that's going to make the difference in what you end up as like 5 years from now.
Exactly. And that's what you did. You were very consistent, and you have a goal when you went back to the gym, besides using this time as an escape, not really an escape, kind of like how you what am I gonna say? How you help yourself heal with the loss, right? You go to the gym, you work out, and you feel good. At the same time, you were going for a competition, right? It gives you kind of a purpose and an aim, a goal to keep your mind on, instead of just focusing on just grieving. And can you tell us a little bit about that part of it, and how it really helped you with grief, and at the same time accomplish something great?
Right. So, I mean, I had been competing for, 15 years at that point, but kind of on and off. Just since like the end of 2009, I decided I'm going all in. My whole life is going to kind of be about building and cutting for competitions and repeating the process, right? Just trying to better myself every time. And so I had actually just done a competition in May of 2015. And so then when he passed away in July, I actually thought, you know what, I'm kind of done. Like, I didn't want to do anymore. I said, it's really hard to get to that process, or to get to the stage anyway. And so at that point, I was just kind of, so upset, I guess. It was just like, what's the point? I kind of like went down a really dark path for, it seemed like months, but in reality, it was probably only a couple of weeks. But I was like, I think I'd rather just, drink wine, or I don't know. So, after that, I thought that I was just going to quit. And then, I got back into the gym and started lifting again, and I thought I really probably need to just kind of get somebody to back me up here, So I think I reached out to one of my previous coaches that I had worked with for competition prep, and just said, I'm kind of like thinking about not doing it anymore. And do you really think that I have a shot, at getting what I want to get at, like getting like, a first place win or more, and he said, yeah, I really do. Like, you're there, you're already there. Like, I do need to build some more muscle, which is really hard for me to do. But, I think you should set a plan to do that. And so I did. And then, I met my current boyfriend at the end of that year. And then he was kind of just getting into bodybuilding. And so he really encouraged me to just kind of go all in again. And I was like, I really don't know that I want to do this. But I was already, I had still been in the gym. And so it helped a lot to have, that support, and, previous coaches and friends who were like, look at you, you're already there. So it's like, you don't want to believe this. You don't believe it in your own head. You can convince yourself. You can look at yourself all day and be like, I don't really think I'm where I need to be. But when somebody else supports you and kind of nudges you a little bit, it does help. And so then I just kind of went all in. I actually had changed to women's physique a couple of years before that. And so I continued along that path, and probably in 2020 was I did women's physique for the last time. But in 2021, I turned 50. And so after I turned 50, I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to go back to figure again, because in figure, they have much more categories in the masters section. And so, I did my 2022 competition. I was 50. And I actually earned my master's. I qualified for Masters Nationals at 50 years old. And so Masters Nationals is actually, it's a really big show in Pittsburgh. And I'm actually qualified to do it this year, but because of my PhD and everything, I've kind of put that on hold just for now. And so I'm hoping next year that I can get re-qualified, and I would love to get my IFBB pro card, even at the age of 52. I will be by then. So that's a huge goal for me, but I'm trying to get there.
You can do it. You can do it. I've seen people prepare, and actually my husband have helped prepare people on stage before. Now he's doing different stuff, but it takes a lot of discipline.
Oh, yeah. It's ridiculous.
I mean, it is ridiculous. I mean, I'm not preparing for a competition. I just want to gain some muscle. And I was like, oh my gosh, how much do I have to eat?
A lot. It's a whole lot.
It was like, I just want a few more pounds of muscle. And
it's a job. It is a job to eat what you need to eat to gain muscle. And people don't understand that. Right. It's all a process, and it's so slow. And that's why most people just don't have the discipline to do it, because they don't get how much time and effort it takes. But I'm telling you, it's just like I said before, if you put in the work, you are going to be so much more confident and proud in the long run, because you know how much it took. And I tell people, you know what are you doing with your time anyway? You know what I mean? You're doing something. You're spending your time somewhere. So why not spend it now granted, competing is not necessarily the healthiest thing, but that's why it's short term. I do think people can end up long-term health issues if they do too much of that, right? But it's just when people are trying to gain muscle, they don't understand that it's so much dependent on your food intake, and you've got to give it time. So, I know where you're coming from.
And with all this discipline and the focus that you give into getting to your goal, right? You kind of, in a way, this really save you from your grief.
Oh my gosh,
and
100%.
Yes. And I read your story on your website. That's why I reached out to you. Very, very compelling story. And, I got to commend you for getting up. I mean, a lot of people, going through grief take them years before they even do anything, before they even get out of bed. And you use something that is a situation that is really traumatic for you, and it's kind of help fuel you to reach your goal, and that's very commendable, and I just respect you for getting out of bed and doing all that, and be an example, right? Even for people who don't work out, for people who are not going out there to get a trophy, to win competition, dealing with grief is not easy if you stay indoor, right? You need to get out and get your body moving, and just heal yourself, try to take care of yourself. And, with that alone, will really help you. But you also have other people who support you. You have people that you talk to. Is that right?
Well, whenever it happened, like I said, you really know who your true friends are, because your true friends are going to be there whether you want to talk or not.
Mm-hmm.
And, they'll even just come see you. They don't have to have big conversations, but just to check on you, to make sure you're okay. And, I did find that out. But, I went to counseling. I had to talk to a counselor for quite a while. Just processing that because I had so much loss before he died. And then that was kind of like, how much more, can I take? I mean, I lost my dad in 2011, the day of my husband's open heart surgery. And then the week of the next week was my dad's funeral. My husband wasn't even recovered. He couldn't even come to my dad's funeral with me. So I had to go, I went by myself. Of course, I have a sister, my mom, but, the day of my dad's funeral, my uncle died. And, my great uncle, who we were really, really close. And then, that fall, our pastor that had married my husband and I, he died. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, what else? And so my grandma was in an assisted living facility, and she kind of wasn't with it in her right mind anymore either. And I thought, she's going to die this year too. She actually made it to 2012, which was good. But then, I lost her too. And she was my only grandparent that I ever knew. I mean, I knew my granddaddy on my mom's side, but he died when I was 7. I never knew either of my dad's parents. So my grandma was like my grandma. She's my only grandparent, that I ever had growing up. So yeah, it was lots of going to the counselor, for a while. But, again, I had clients that I trained, and I had run fitness boot camps for years, probably about 10 years total. So a lot of the ladies that came to my boot camps, they were like family to me too. And so they were there for me. They had been with me at boot camp, most of them about 8 years, in the town that I grew up in. And so they were all, they all came around and were very supportive. But, when you're dealing with stuff like that, you really just kind of want to seclude yourself. And I think that's totally normal. And I think it's okay. But I think you also have to there has to be a limit. You got to start doing little things to get yourself back out there, because it's real easy to bury yourself in and thankfully I had kids. So I wanted to keep myself together for them, and I'm a strong person, and I had that discipline, for 15 years before that. So that helped me a lot. But it's real easy to just go lay on the bed or lock yourself in a dark room because you're upset, but you got to start. It's just like rebuilding, it's kind of like your body. If you're a bodybuilder and you're trying to build muscle, you can't just do it all at once, right? It takes little steps. You're laying these bricks to build the foundation, right? It's the same thing when you're trying to deal with grief. It's got to be little bits at a time. They will add up, but you've got to start. You've just got to start small, but let yourself have that time to still, mourn and be upset, and that's okay. But maybe just try to do 5 more minutes of whatever you're doing, the next week, and then try to add 5 more minutes. It can't be just throw it all in. It's like with bodybuilding. You're not all of a sudden just gonna, lift heavy once, and the heavier you lift, the better you're going to build your body, right? No, it takes time of little bits over time consistently, right? So the same thing I think goes with, dealing with grief. You got to get out there, get outside, get moving, do things, be sociable, even if it's just 10 minutes, and then just try to build. You can just keep building. And then it gets easier, and it's not like the sadness ever really goes away. it's always there. But I think the more you build on to those things that you're doing consistently, it is easier to deal with,
Right. I know it's still emotional for you to talk about it, and I want to remind our listener and people who are watching on YouTube that it's been 8 years for you. But for people who lost someone, and I think it was you that mentioned it. Some people will say, you haven't gotten over it yet. It's been a long time, but for you and for me too, it's like it still seems like yesterday. What you've been through. Not that you want to wallow in sorrow. You move on, but still you respect that the sadness still there, but you learn to deal with it better. And I think a lot of people who haven't had that loss cannot comprehend that. And you mentioned a few things for people that going through loss, right? What you recommended, allow yourself to grieve, to have that time. And then you say to go out. It's a process, a little bit at a time. It's like building, like bodybuilding, doing that a little bit at a time. And then you also said, get a counselor, go and have a conversation, even if you just there sitting, right? My therapist, I also go seek counseling. And you said some people would just come in there and they just sit and they don't talk for a whole hour, and he just sit there and be with them. And even if that, you go out and then you seek support, right? And have people that you trust that check up on you. Oh, you have your dog back there.
No, it's my cat.
Oh,
she likes to come in. She only comes in here if I'm on the computer talking, and then she has learned how to open the door herself and come in here and get up.
Queen, she can show herself.
Oh my goodness!
What's her name?
Amethyst.
Amethyst. Oh wow, the purple cat.
She's my black cat.
Nice. Animals are wonderful. They give you good energy. And thank you so much, Holly. I wish we can talk more, but can you believe it? We've been talking for almost an hour. Oh my gosh.
It's easy to go an hour.
Yeah, very easy.
But I appreciate you having me on here.
Thank you. I want to ask you a few more questions, and I ask this to all my podcast guests because I believe that we all deserve some wishes. So if you have a genie in a bottle, and if you can have 3 wishes, and you rub on the bottle, on the lamp, and you can ask the genie anything that you want. 3 wishes. What would those be? That it will change everything in your life.
I don't know. I mean, because I don't want to change everything. So I feel like there's a higher power that has a purpose for your life, and everything that happens leads you to the ultimate, where you're supposed to be. Right. But, and I told you this earlier, but I would want one of my wishes, I know everybody passes when they're supposed to. I mean, kind of I feel like God has purpose. God has plan. Yeah. But I always, my dad was my, he taught me how to play all my sports. He used to go lift at the YMCA when we were growing up, and I always wanted to go to the weight room with my dad. So, and I never got to, ever. Because he ended up falling apart physically before we ever could. So one of my wishes, I wanted to go lift weights with my dad. That's one of my wishes. A second wish, I had a second wish in my mind. But that would be one of them. I wish that I could get, let's just pick a random number. I wish that I could get 1 million women that were my age to understand how important it is to lift weights. Because they don't. And there's too many people that think cardio is the answer and fat loss is the answer, when really, I just wrote a newsletter on this in my LinkedIn today and said, muscle should be your focus. Mm-hmm. If the world had more muscle, you would have less fat as a result. But people focus on the fat loss and not the muscle gain. And that's the wrong order. So let's just say that would be my second wish, is to get 1 million women to understand, or more than that. But anyway, I don't know. I mean, you can't really say I wish health and happiness for everybody. I wish for, world peace.
Yes,
I wish.
Yes, you can.
I can't. Okay, so I mean, I wish for, and this kind of goes with my strength training thing, mm-hmm. is, my belief is that you lift for life, and that's more than in one way. Mm-hmm. You lift to live longer, and you lift to have a better life. So I wish that health and happiness, I wish strength for everyone, because, look at all of the disease in the world and all of the thing, and a lot of that can be combated if you had more muscle. More muscle is going to help with fat loss. More muscle is going to lead to a better life and a better longevity. Less falls, less injuries. I think about my family members who passed away. Not my husband, because I think his was actually a genetic thing. Mm-hmm. But I think about my uncles that passed and my dad, and just how far out of health they were. Mm-hmm. And I think, if people lifted weights more, they would be healthier longer. They would be stronger longer, just carrying your own groceries. And so I don't know what that wish is, but I wish health and happiness. People need to be more in charge of their health. Don't leave it up to medicine to fix things. You want to have yourself be where you don't, and yes, there are times where everybody needs medicine for something to maybe recover from, but it shouldn't be something that you're dependent on to live a healthy life. You want your body to be strong and healthy on its own. And if you need a little bit of support in there sometime, then that's okay. But I don't know. I could have 1 million wishes. But for people to not depend on medication, oh my gosh, it's so bad, because I think a lot of times people think that that's their only way mm-hmm. to live. And too many people look for a magic pill mm-hmm. to fix their problems, when their problems are really, there's a deeper root issue. Whether it's high cholesterol, high blood pressure, don't take a pill to fix it. Mm-hmm. You got to get to the root of the problem. And I just drug out my 3 wishes way too long.
Oh, that's okay. We can talk about your 3 wishes in another podcast. Yeah. And I literally can comment on all of that. And I know before we start recording the podcast, we speak about your dad, in a way that, because I also wish my loved ones would come back. And then, like you said, God have a higher purpose. You know what? Your dad is always with you.
Oh,
And
no. He is. He really is.
he always working out with you in the gym. He's here with you now. He's in your heart. He have never left. And
I remember one time when I was getting ready to compete, and my dad was in the hospital, and I don't know if he had surgery, but my dad's thing was whenever my dad had surgery, he had this little bracelet and he had a watch. And because there were multiple surgeries, like the last 5 years of his life, he always gave me his watch and his bracelet to hold while he went to surgery. And so I'm so thankful that I got that watch and I had it like adjusted to my size. Of course, it's big because it's a man's watch, but I love it. It needs another battery again. But, I'm so thankful that I got that. And so when he was in the hospital one time, he, I don't remember what year it was, but I remember I was getting ready to compete, and he was totally out of it, just like on medication. Mm-hmm. But he said, "Holly, I'm really proud of you, like for competing." He's just like, "I think that's awesome." And I just remember him being in the hospital bed telling me that. And so that sticks with me. And I know how proud he would be of me, or that hopefully he'll be, that I'm getting my Ph.D., because I do believe I'm the first person in our family on either side to hopefully become a doctor, not an MD, but a Ph.D. But either way, it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. It's
so, I know he'd be proud of that.
Yes, I'm sure he is proud of you. And I will go search for that LinkedIn post, and I will comment on your second wish when you said you wish women would understand how important it is to have the strong body, to have the strong muscle. And oh my gosh, because I'm married to like a health nut now. Like we wake up at 3 a.m. to go to the gym, and I can literally, Holly, I can feel the difference when I walk, when I sit, when I do anything. Women, go out there and lift weights. Weight bearing exercise, very important. And I want you to come back, and we'll talk just about that.
It'll be my pleasure.
And health and happiness for everybody, and that's my wish for everyone too. But I got something for you, Holly.
Yes.
And this is a blue ribbon. It said, "Who I am makes a difference." And I want to honor you with this blue ribbon. May I?
Yes, thank you.
It is a gift. And I just want to honor you for coming onto this podcast and just bare your soul pretty much. I know it is very vulnerable subject, and you a very strong woman. And I just want to honor you for that, to staying strong and to be the rock for your kids, and to keep the business going when you yourself were just in distraught and in, you're an amazing woman.
Oh, thank you.
Look at all those trophies behind you. Just want to honor you for being so strong and for being a coach, for being a good example for many women out there. And I'm going to virtually put this on you. It goes above your heart like this, and it point up to the sky where all your wishes come true. That's why I asked you for your wishes.
Thank you.
And it is a tradition for me to put a spark from my heart and put it on your heart and touch right there. There's a cheerleader here cheering you on, and it makes a sound, bing, and that makes all your wishes come true.
Thank you.
I want to honor you for that.
Thank you so much.
It is actually also a tradition to give you 2 blue ribbons, but I can't give it to you because we're virtual, where you can just pay it forward and honor someone that you care about, someone that you look up to. And I appreciate you. Thank you so much, Holly. And
Of course.
stay in touch. I would really love for you to come back again and talk about all these great things to help keep us strong and healthy and live a happier life. Thank
I
you
would
so
love
much.
that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.